All right, so pretty interesting what you saw in different countries in terms of business confidence and investment confidence. There are a lot of countries that don't enjoy that same stability. And again, the question you might ask is, well, are these places that I'm going to be doing business? Does it matter that there are other countries that have less business and consumer confidence? When firms internationalize, these are questions that they have to ask. Not all countries are going through the same economic conditions at the same time. All right, so now we move to the tool. You've got all this information. We've talked about culture. We've talked about society. We've talked about regulations. We've talked about all of these aspects which might influence competition, which might influence how your firms strategically place themselves. Now we need to be able to identify these. We need to be able to kind of have a method to go through this. Now, in your paper, what you're trying to do is use these identified institutions to show how the firm has changed, right? You can show whether these institutional pressures or macroeconomic changes matter by looking at things through profits through time, sales through time. Okay, so you want to make the case that the macro environment does matter for your firm, right? It's not recession proof. Well, that's a claim, but now you need to back up that claim with some type of fact. All right, so look at profits and sales through time. Look at stock price through time. This is going to be the data that supports your hypothesis that these firms do need to take into consideration the macro environment. You're trying to correlate the behavior of your firm with the data that you're looking at. Trying to make an argument that it doesn't matter or it does matter, right? Remember, if you're going to sell this analysis to somebody, they would want to know, right? Does it matter if we go through a recession? Of course, all firms are going to be impacted in some way, but to what degree, right? Another consideration as to say this industry looks like a good place to be, or this industry is not looking so hot these days. Okay, so how can we structure this analysis, right? You're going to use what's called a pestle analysis. And what you're going to do, and actually for your paper, it's a little bit more simplified. We just ask you to do PEST, so it's a pest analysis. And what you're trying to do here is look at political factors, economic factors, social factors, and technological factors. Now, I think fundamentally you can't really talk about any of those things without talking about the legal environment, and I do think that it is important to consider the ecological environment. If you feel like it is something that you want to touch on in your paper, that's fine, but again, it's not necessarily included. If you look at the rubric for your paper, I won't be grading you specifically on that topic. But all the other characters, PEST, do need to be taken into consideration. So, how can you do this? Well, what you're going to do is create an analysis for your group, but discussing each one of your firms. Okay, so given the fact that your firms in this group are in the group because they share common resources or they share similar assets or they share basically the same structure, right? Then you don't necessarily have to delve into each company too much. But you do want to make a mention of how each firm has dealt with these forces. But what I'm trying to say is you can do the pest analysis uh, in discussion of the group itself. Okay, so are there political, economic, social and cultural factors, technological factors that this group is going to have to take into consideration? Okay, so what I'm going to do is we're just going to go through each of these groups or part of this pestle analysis, pest analysis, if you will, and just to kind of give you an idea of factors that you might want to be thinking about. And again, not all of them matter for your group. It may not matter at all, but it's something you do want to touch on. Okay, so political factors are going to include government regulations, legal issues. All right, these are the clearly defined formal and informal rules under which the firm must operate. Okay, so does the political environment matter? Here are some other examples, right? Regulations, trade restrictions, tariffs, the legal framework for contract enforcement. Does your firm need to have a legal team, right? Is this going to be a component that either allows you to play the game or not? Is there tax policy? Do you have intellectual property protection? Are you relying on, are you using patents and copyrights? Is this an aspect of your industry? Would you have to take into consideration employment laws? Some industries are highly automated, so obviously they're going to have less employees. It's not necessarily as important. Uh, and clearly, there's going to be people working there, but is it going to be a massive source of resource use? Okay, economic factors, right? What do you want to touch on? Is growth a massive part of how your industry survives? Again, are you debt financed? So do you need to care about interest rates? Are you an international company, or is your group international? Do they need to worry about exchange rate fluctuation? Are they operating in commodities markets or in industries where massive changes in prices matter? Inflation rates are not the same for every country. So, are you an international company or is your group international? And are they in places with hyperinflation? Is that something that's going to be on the radar for your group? Not all countries have the same economic system. The People's Republic of China claim to be communist, right? Is this going to impact how you internationalize? Um, are you going to a place where there's authoritarian rule, where they don't enjoy the same sense of capitalism that's in the United States? All right, so economic factors. Does it matter of the skill level of your workforce? Um, do you have to pay high labor or high wages for labor or low wages for labor? Are you a company or is it a group that relies on low wages in other countries? If you start to see countries that rely on low wage labor, but more and more investment is happening in those countries, you do start to see an increase in wages. Is that going to significantly impact your operations? Is that something that will have to be of concern for your group? Okay. Social factors, right? So now you're drilling down what we talked about in the very beginning of this presentation. Is culture on the radar? Are ethics on the radar? Do you have to be socially responsible? Do you have to claim to be socially responsible? Or is there an opportunity to profit from saying you're socially responsible? Not all countries have the same class structure, right? So is this going to impact who your consumers are? Do you need a highly educated consumer base for your sales? Um, what about culture in the sense of gender, right? Are these things, again, these are all very broad categories, but trying to give you an idea so that you can think about your group and say, outside of this industry, outside of my normal operations of how I produce this good or service, are there forces beyond industry competition, beyond direct supply chain network that are going to impact my firm? Okay. Technological factors. Now, this could be good, this could be bad, right? Technological factors can make it easier for firms to operate and begin, right? If we have something that's now become a standard technology and it's easily adoptable, it's actually reducing the barriers to entry. Is that going to cause more competition then? Are we seeing more automation? Is this on the rise? Banks, for example, are automating many of their tellers. This is going to be a big factor of change in that industry and for competition and for cost cutting. Does technological change fundamentally matter for your industry? Some firms have been doing the same thing for 100 years and they don't need to change. Apple, for example, on the other hand, has to change every year, right? So is technology a massive component in this group that's going to impact competition? The legal environment, I think, I know I said you only have to do pest, but you can't really not touch on whether the legal environment matters or not. I think you just have to. Are property rights an issue? Are new laws coming out? Are you in an industry that potentially could be regulated very soon? Or, on the other hand, given the political structure, are you going to potentially enjoy less regulation soon? We're seeing quite a bit of deregulation these days, for better or for worse. But that could either encourage competition, it could encourage cost reduction, or if it's the other direction, if there's more enforcement, then it's something that you're going to have to spend resources on to figure out how to enforce. Ecological environment, we kind of talked about this earlier on in the presentation when I mentioned the Harvard Business Review article. Does your group have to worry about changing an energy source? Are they worried about the price of oil and the price of gas in 50 years? Should they begin an investment program in solar or renewable methods? These are just kind of considerations to say, again, what is going on inside my industry and inside my group? And should I enter this, right? The two perspectives. Okay, so what I want you to do now, the presentation is over for this class session. Kind of short, but you can tell this is a pretty massive section. There's a lot going on here. I also know that at this point in the semester, you're starting to get a little more stressed out, and I have seen this part of the analysis kind of get on the back burner. Try your best to not let that happen. Start now. And so to help you with that, now the presentation's over. Really, you should have 2 more hours or so to kind of work on this. So what I want you to do is to use some time now and conduct a macroinstitutional pest analysis for your group. Okay, what should you consider? Government, regulatory environment. Identify the roles of lobbying groups and labor unions if it matters. Is there political pressures? Is there environmental regulations? Uh, does the recent global economic downturn matter to you? Has it changed your group? What about the global economic, social, cultural factors? What are these having an impact on your group? Show how these variables are correlated. So take your pest and find the most important points that are going to impact your strategic group. Then see if you can start to brainstorm where you're going to find data and support to back up your claim of either it's going to impact or it's not going to impact. It should be on the radar or it doesn't really matter. Okay. Now, what you want to do after your pest, and this should be in your strategic analysis in the end of your paper, what do the results of your pest and macro analysis reveal with respect to 5 forces? Okay. What does the pest reveal about the macro pressures? What you're trying to do here now in this stage of the analysis is link everything together. So you have now a number of analyses that have sought to understand the nature of competition in this group and in this industry. You're now trying to connect it all together. We've said you have pressure from new players. You have pressure from the supply chain. You have pressures from the macro environment and the institutional environment. You've developed a strategy. What should these firms be starting to think about going forward? This is leading you towards the end of your analysis where you're going to create a recommendation on what to do. Okay, so this is the end of the presentation. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, please email me. I am absolutely available through email, and I want you to be clear about this. If you have any doubt, let me know. If you need any further assistance, let me know. I'd be happy to look at any of your outlines. I'd be happy to kind of help you clarify any issues. Now, I think a good resource for you is the paper prompt. It's going to spell out exactly what you need to be thinking about for this component of the paper. Don't let this one go on the back burner. I know you've done a lot of work so far, but now is really the time to kind of actually push it to the limit here. I know, I can hear that 80s song playing through my head, but you need to kind of keep going with this. All right. All right. So I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.